Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's two guys on a couch here to talk about Superman, because we've just been to see the brand new beginning of the DC universe from James Gunn, the much anticipated Superman, starring David Corenswet as the Man of Steel, Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, the big bald baddie, and Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane, among many, many other great faces and characters. We're going to be doing a spoiler review here, so if you're concerned about spoilers, you should probably skedaddle elsewhere, but if you just want to have all the details in your face right now, we're going to be going into the main beats of the movie, our thoughts and feelings, and also that zinger of an ending. And yeah, Josh, before we go any further, I'm just going to say this right now. I was looking forward to Superman. I was like anticipating it. But the hype kind of slowly crept up on me like a couple weeks ago, and I realized how ready I was for a movie like this. And coming out of it, I'm like, this was great. This did for Superman what Matt Reeves' The Batman did to me. And the main takeaway I have from it all is like Matt Reeves with The Batman, James Gunn gets the spirit of Superman. It feels like we're seeing a version of DC Comics that I grew up with, and it resonated most with me, that hasn't been on the screen for years and years now, and that is immensely gratifying. Despite some occasional hiccups, I had a great time with this.
Yeah, I'd fully agree. Even though I'm not as big on my Superman comic book lore or anything like that, there was about a moment, maybe 10 minutes into this film, where I just thought, you get it. And I understand why this movie has been made. I understand why you've wanted to make it. And even though I am a fan of James Gunn and his other projects, he's always been a little hit and miss in terms of where they fall for me. And I do think it's worth noting that, I don't know what you think about this, we haven't actually talked about it. To me, this feels like a very different James Gunn film from something like The Suicide Squad from a few years ago. And that doesn't even mean that this is necessarily better, but it's not him kind of playing the hits necessarily. You can tell that he is trying to shake up some of the conventions maybe that he's been relying on for the past couple of movies and try to make Superman feel distinct from other superhero films that are out there, and certainly other superhero films from within his own canon.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree. As much as I loved The Suicide Squad, I had a great time with that film, it's still kind of playing to the familiar themes and beats that we've seen in stuff like Guardians of the Galaxy. And those three films I do really, really enjoy. But after a while, the kind of like found family, bunch of misfits that are really snarky and irreverent and constantly, you know, making quips with each other, that we've gotten used to it. Not to say that it's bad, but it's become familiar. And I think the real compliment you can pay James Gunn with Superman here is that he hasn't taken that kind of broad approach to the character. He's really looked at what makes him tick, the various intricacies about, you know, why do we need a Superman movie in this present moment in time? And what he does there is he cultivates a kind of adaptation that feels really comprehensive in terms of it's pulling from like the original Golden Age in terms of like the kind of like the man of the people type stuff. You've got the kooky Silver Age science going in with Lex Luthor, and all of that again. It kind of feels to me reflective of a Grant Morrison comic book where when they did Superman for All Star Superman and also Superman and the Authority, which this movie really reminds me of, is they really kind of take a everything counts kind of approach. And I love that this movie just drops you straight into the middle of the action. You know, Superman's been around for like 3 years now. Metahumans have been around for decades before that, and centuries before that as well. So it already instantly does a lot of world building in a way that doesn't feel... It doesn't feel kind of like contrived or takes you out of the moment. It all feels kind of seamless, which is a huge compliment to pay, because I was really anxious about them. You know, I think when they announced this new DC universe, as much as I was excited to see James Gunn do his stuff, the exhaustion and fatigue of, oh god, it's another franchise, and they're laying all these intricate plans on the table, and we're going to be, you know, when you think of Batman v Superman, like that was like, okay, we're bringing this all together right now. Yeah. This does this in a much more kind of natural way, because it's not trying to thread together a bunch of different origin stories. It's just plonking you in the middle of a universe that feels, you know, real isn't maybe the right word, but it feels lived in, and it feels kind of like there's a history to it, which again is another reason why I love DC so much.
Want to stay safe online and save big? Get up to 76% off a 2-year NordVPN plan, plus 4 months free, and up to a $50 Amazon gift card. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description and it's all yours.
That's one of the biggest compliments I can pay to the film as well, is how effortless it makes that wider world building feel. Like you said, even before we got the first trailer and the announcement that we were going to get Guy Gardner in there, we were going to get other members of the Justice Gang in there, and a bunch of different metahumans, my initial worry, my warning bells that were going off was, is this going to lose focus on being a Superman movie, and how are you going to make Superman himself feel distinct, not just in terms of like a power set compared to all of these other heroes and all of these other larger-than-life gods and monsters that you have in the film, but how are you going to characterize him as someone who obviously is a part of this wider group but is distinct, and that's what they get so effortlessly in this movie. Yeah. There is that sequence where they're fighting a giant mutant within Metropolis itself, and Superman, as opposed to the other heroes around him, is making a real conscious effort to not just brutally murder this thing, but try to humanely,
my friends have killed the kaiju with hammers, I can say that much. Guy Gardner 2025.
Trying to humanely get that kaiju out of there, and I think at one point he says to like an interdimensional zoo.
In a space zoo, or like something like that. Yeah,
exactly.
That earnestness is translated so well. Corin Sweat is brilliant in the role, but you're so right there. Initially, everyone's alarm bells, I feel, was going off when it was like, we're going to have all these characters in there. But it makes perfect sense. If you're approaching Superman from the perspective and context of like, we've had this guy be rebooted so many different times now, in so many different flavors, what makes this movie necessary? Why do we need to make this beyond the commercial obligations of us being a part of Warner Brothers and Superman being this, this huge IP where his symbol is like one of the most recognizable symbols on planet Earth? And the answer is we contrast him with every other hero that we've kind of seen developed on screen for the past 20 odd years. It makes a real definitive statement about not killing people in this movie. And like you say, where the Justice Gang come along and they're trying to like, bust some skulls and take some names, Supes is there like saving squirrels and trying to minimize collateral damage and do all sorts of all of that, and it just is, it's done so well, and there's never a point here where I feel like any of those supporting heroes are underserved either, because Green Lantern, who again, I love Guy Gardner in the comics. I was very worried about his role in this movie because, like his hair, he can kind of be a bit distracting.
Yeah.
But they do it really well. They integrate him seamlessly and he gets a lot of great moments, Nathan Fillion. I loved Hawk Girl, and I loved Mr. Terrific, and I loved Metamorpho, who I'm a little bit giddy about seeing on the big screen, my gloopy guy in all his glory.
I can only echo what you said there about like that characterization of Superman. That is the heart and soul of this film for me, and I do think it is a very passionate and emotional film at times, despite all of the humor that's going on as well, and that endless compassion that Superman kind of has as a character that both can blind him but also fuels him to be the person he is. That is like the thread for me. That's like the theme all the way through. But yeah, let me talk about that kind of ensemble idea, because I cannot get my head around how well this thing's crafted in terms of its structure and introducing those characters. And maybe that's dumb to say because James Gunn and his previous movies, whether they're Marvel ones or DC ones, have traded in perfecting that ensemble feel, but this manages to introduce all of these wider characters, like you said, the heroes that you mentioned there, on top of everyone from the Daily Planet, on top of Ma and Pa Kent. Like, there's a stacked cast here, and yet this focus is never really off Superman as a person, so it never feels like he's kind of overshadowed by everyone else, and everyone gets their time to shine, and they might only get a scene or two, but he makes sure that scene is really impactful.
Feels precision engineered,
exactly.
Right? I think one of the things I spoke to you immediately after the movie ended was like, my favorite thing about this film was the Daily Planet dynamic that they had going on. It is probably the most comic accurate representation that we've had of the Superman supporting characters on the big screen, which is amazing. Rachel Brosnahan is wonderful as Lois Lane, like just the spitting image of how Lois is kind of depicted in the comics, but also just, you think of like Margot Kidder in like the original Superman movie. She has a lot of that spirit to her, but it's done in her own unique way. There's kind of like that punky kind of vibe going around. Jimmy Olsen is wonderful. I love you, Jimmy. It's just a great time. And also I think I felt like I was in good hands. As soon as Cat Grant and Steve Lombard came out, and it was like, both of these characters have nothing to do in this movie, essentially.
Yeah.
Perry White doesn't have that much to do as well. But in the fraction of half of a scene that they get between them, it's like instantly like, no, you understand the source material here. You understand the different complementary features of what makes this ecosystem and what has made this ecosystem so compelling to readers for the past, like, 80 years, which is just, it's great. There's so much weighty material being marshaled here. And when you consider all the other stuff that James Gunn is doing on top of Superman in terms of guiding this whole project forward, he's pulled it off. That's what I'm saying. I think he's really done it with the plum here.
I think you're right. Like, it's, to me, and I said this to you before we started filming, like, this movie is everything that it kind of needs to be. It is that confident step forward to reintroduce a character that has had ups and downs over the past 10 years, let's say, and reintroduce people to a world and a comic book universe that, again, has had its ups and downs over the past few years, and it's done it with, like, a sense of confidence and a sense of, like, purpose. It doesn't feel like you mentioned, one of those reboots that comes along and you're like, I can see the corporate mechanisms whirring as to why this has happened. Yeah, precisely. This is like, oh no, we are here with a set kind of sense of intent, and we are going to kind of make you love all of these other characters that you might not even be familiar with. Like, I'm not. Like, I don't know if they're comic book accurate or not, but I understand who they are, even from that kind of like small appearance that they may have in the overall film. I think, that balance of the script with the character focus, that was what impressed me the most. You get a scene earlier on that was teased a little bit in some of the trailers where you get Lois, who knows obviously that Clark is Superman, sitting down with Clark as Superman to interview him and is asking him like difficult questions, and they get into a bit of an argument.
I don't think I
over
should
it.
answer that, Lois.
Get into this like really fun argument over it that has that emotional weight that defines each other's personalities, that gives you this sense of history that you might not have obviously seen on screen. And it's just, to me, the fact that you get this in a movie like this, which has so much going on, so many different action scenes, especially towards the end, that you get to have that scene and let it breathe, and for it to be longer than what you see in the trailer. I just think that's, I can only mention the balance and the pacing, but it's cool that you have that in there in its entirety, and then you get all of the spectacular stuff on top, because it grounds it, it anchors it, and it gives you that kind of emotional through line throughout.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we're talking about emotional through lines, we probably need to talk about Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. I've been invested in the Nicholas Hoult stocks for a while now, Josh Brown, and I feel like they're the past 8 months it's going because he is just brilliant in everything right now, and his interpretation of Lex Luthor, kind of wash, not to take one performance down in praising another, but it does kind of wash the bad taste out of my mouth that I got from Jesse Eisenberg's, Granny's Peach Tea or whatever it was, 9 years ago. He is fully enveloped in the psychology and hubris of this deeply, deeply insecure man. And it's great because you get the mixture of menace and threat, and also the kind of humorousness of the fact that he is just such a tyrant and is just downright insane. And I love the chemistry that they share together on screen, Lex and Supes. There was that real proper rivalry, and during that final confrontation where Supes bursts into the Luthor Corp the ship thing, and is having that kind of this is who I am, this is what I am, and this is who you are moment, and you see that rage and the tears falling down, and he's admitting I am blinded by envy and stuff like that. It comes from a great place, and I'm really excited. Again, I feel like it's cliche to talk about Superman, this movie, being the start of a new comic book franchise, and, going the whole, I'm so excited to see where it goes next, because we're so used to that statement as a thing with, Marvel over the last 5 years of the movie wasn't that good, but I'm excited to see what comes next or whatever. With this, it is fully a case of, I'm invested in the project right now. It's still step one, it's still early days, but the final shot of him when he's, he's take his bald ass back to Bel Rev, and he's just stewing, but kind of with a little bit of a knowing grin that he has more up his sleeve. That has me excited for more, and it just feels like that kind of the never-endingness of superhero fiction, but in a good way. It feels a part of that legacy. It feels part of a filmic legacy when you get those John Williams kind of beats coming through in the score as well. But it's truly comprehensive, and to me, Hoult kind of exemplifies that with his performance.
He's unreal. Every single time he was on screen, he steals the scene that he's in, and he is such an intense performer anyway, but he kind of manages to bring that to Lex Luthor in a way where he's not just this kind of maniacal, over-the-top, soulless billionaire. Like you said, when you get to that sequence towards the end where he's talking about his own failings and how he's fully aware of how the envy within him is overtaking him, like there is not sympathy within there, but a humanity within there that has been corrupted, that has been completely like pushed to the bottom, that you feel. And I think that's why it makes the end kind of look, which we have seen so many times before. I literally watched Fantastic Four 2005 the other day, which is cinema, some would say, which obviously has a similar thing where you get the eyes of Doctor Doom towards the end that he might be back, right? And you don't believe it. Here, this time around, you get Nicholas Hoult, and because of the impressiveness of the writing, because of that performance, you buy into it, and you kind of like want to see what is going to come next for that character. And I love his arc in the movie, that you get, it's not an origin story necessarily, but you get that like fully mask off moment right at the very end, and it's like exciting and it's kind of intense, like I keep saying, and it all comes back to that performance and the chemistry between Lex and Supes, which is absolutely bang on. Like, I think the biggest compliment I can pay the movie is that I was wanting more scenes of those two together, not because I thought the film was lacking them, but because they were so good and they were so electric, and that chemistry and that history, that implied history, is already there, that I'm like, I just want to see these guys like give each other crap. You know what I mean?
I'm trying to think of the last time I saw a comic book movie and the lead hero and villain, and I was so excited to see them spar with each other on screen, because as much as we all love, the Dark Knight and Chris Bale and Heath Ledger and their back and forth in that film, even with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson, it's like, well, they were great together, but I'm trying to think of things where people were like kind of like shooting off each other, and I guess maybe the closest I can think of right now is probably Willem Dafoe and Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man, where there is that kind of like the back and forth morality going on between them, and it feels like Doc Ock and Peter Parker even in Spider-Man 2. So it very much feels of a piece with that kind of like Sam Raimi sincerity. It isn't cynical, there's humor, but it doesn't feel like it's an attempt to undermine or feel embarrassed or ashamed about what it's proclaiming. It feels unashamedly like a James Gunn Superman movie, which is really, really good. And the note that it kind of ends on going forward, we get a really, really good tease of Supergirl, played by Millie Alcock, which is that movie. Supergirl is coming out next year. It's based on the Tom King comic with Bilquis Ively? I need to remember the name of the artist. I'm really sorry that I've completely missed that up, because her art is like fantastic. But like the actual, tease going into that, really great impression. It feels seamlessly integrated. It doesn't feel bolt on. We don't have to wait for the post-credits scene for it to come along and, kind of expand upon what we have to expect going forward. The post-credits here are just fun little cute gags, which is kind of what it means to be. If you've got a piece of crucial information that you want to relay to people, best have it in the movie, and it's blended in really seamlessly and nicely.
Yeah, I think that seamlessness is what kind of makes it really work. Like, if you could watch this movie and like genuinely not think that there's any wider universe to come, barely even a sequel, right? There are of course those hints in there, but it feels self-contained, and I think you get that through the post-credit sequences, which are just kind of gags. It's not bended over backwards to set up this world, but rather planting those seeds, like that scene with Supergirl, that you can then, run with later on down the line with different creators and different filmmakers. And it's they've learned a lot of lessons, put it that way, in terms of how to build out a wider universe, and more importantly, get you invested within that wider universe. And yeah, again, as someone who is so less versed on these characters, all I needed was 30 seconds with Supergirl towards the end to understand her character, set that film up, and then I'm like,
she's always partying on red sun planets.
Exactly, and I'm like, sick. I'm in. You've proved to me that you can take these characters and make them work with the level of humanity that I want. So yeah, I'm confident in where it's going to go. Like you said, it's early days. I don't personally think like the film is perfect by any means. For me, I do have some criticisms. I think the exposition, especially towards the early part of the movie, is a little bit clunky, because they are trying to not do an origin story and get you caught up, which means a lot of time spent kind of watching newscasts where there are news reporters just explaining stuff, which is fine. You need to do that. It is economical. It doesn't really remove too much from the overall pacing and whatnot. The middle part, where Superman is kind of trapped in the pocket dimension, It's not bad, but it lulled a little bit for me, and you get some of that kind of
Pacing
CGI.
feels a bit up and down in that moment.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So like the kind of like the lull and like the bagginess of that sequence combined with that's kind of where you get true. We are in kind of CGI dark blue land for a little bit, and it's a little bit visually muddy. That was probably like the weakest element for me, but they do make that kind of, I don't know, digression or tangent or whatever kind of worthwhile with the characters that are then introduced and how they're paid off down the line. So it's not something that I think really kills the film or anything like that. It's just compared to the start, which I really loved, and then the end, which ends on a high. It's just a slight lowering of something.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think I have similar criticisms. I think visually overall, the movie really surprised me in terms of how much everything gelled together. I was worried that it was going to get quite smooshy and slushy, as we have seen in the past with different Superman movies. But this, to me, you know, everything's crisp, it's clear, there's a real good visual, bold identity to the film. At times, it does kind of look like a bit of a car advert, which is a shame, just in a few different bits and bobs. I think at the beginning, the first confrontation with the fist of whatever country is involved, or I forgot, generic, you know, European standing nation. That looks a little bit janky, but everything else, by and large, I thought looked pretty good. Even the pocket dimension stuff, like I thought, like by and large, it looked okay to me. Although I do agree that it's clearly shot darkly to mask any kind of like any imperfections, as it were. But you know,
Overall, though, like I agree, it looked better than I was expecting it to. I didn't have a huge problem necessarily with like the color grade from the trailers or even like the CGI. I know a lot of people did not like, for some reason, that shot of Superman's face when he does a little twirl and then he flies out. I thought it was cool.
Looks great in the movie.
But in the movie itself, it looks really good and it comes together. And I think from a cinematography perspective, it occasionally dips into that kind of advert-esque stuff where it feels a little bit conventional. But I think right from the opening scene, like the colors are there, like the intent is there, and it's not a high bar maybe to say this in current year, but it looks like a film. Ewan Patterson first and foremost, with authorial intent behind it, and that's is sometimes when it comes to one of these flicks, it's all you can kind of ask.
Yeah, it was interesting the other day. James Gunn did a really good interview with GQ, I believe. You know, when they do like the breaking down ex-movie directors' scenes or iconic scenes or like iconic movies or whatever, and there was a really good discussion in there about superhero fatigue, and James Gunn saying, well, I don't think superhero fatigue exists. I think people have bad movie fatigue. And before that, I was kind of like, well, I don't know. I feel like maybe the genre has kind of, you know, overstayed its welcome on the big screen. But with this, it's like, okay, no, maybe, you know, maybe it is just a case of like we've overestimated just how, you know, sloppy the slop has been, and that in itself has toxified kind of the wider genre. Whereas with this, it feels like such a breath of fresh air, despite, you know, all those universal commitments to building what's coming next. It does feel fresh. I do feel reinvigorated watching this film, which is really exciting and positive.
I think it's that earnestness that's at the heart of it, and it's the fact that, like, I don't know, we've had so many good superhero movies even over the past few years, but like the idea of having a character at the center of it that you care about and want to follow, I feel like, for me anyway, that's fallen by the wayside a little bit, and just the fact that I came away from this like genuinely emotional to see Superman in the final scene looking at images from his childhood, man, Pa Kent, and him getting lifted up doing his
2000s indie rock band.
Literally his indie rock band. I'm like, it's been so long since I've viewed someone in one of these films like as a person, and it's weird to me that like Superman, who is often held up as being the most alien of them all, right, is the one after so long that has felt that most human, right? That gives you that connection, that makes you think, like, I understand who you are as a person, and that just allows you to attach to the characters a little bit more, I think, and be more invested in their plight, I suppose.
My big hope with this film is that people who are maybe Superman doubters go into it open-armed, open-hearted, and let Supes into your heart, because I feel like this is you know, the Richard Donner movies, they get the spirit of the character too, but that was from a certain era. With this, there is a much more comprehensive blending of different comic book eras going on. And for me, it feels like it's like, okay, no, this is what I want from Supes. And I hope that people who are maybe a little Superman skeptical, because I hear it all the time, of like, oh, I can't get into Superman, he's too powerful, where's his vulnerabilities lie? His vulnerabilities lie, like you said, Josh Brown, in the fact that he is so human. And that in itself is perfectly relayed here. And I can't wait to see what comes next in regards to Supergirl, because if this is the level of understanding that they've shown with this many different DC characters in one film, I'm so excited to see
Dude.
what we're getting next.
You've mentioned it, but it's that idea of, is it superhero fatigue, or is it just that we're not getting superhero movies that are good enough? And I remember before going to see this movie, which I was excited about, the idea of something like Batman the Brave and the Bold, I was like, that could work, but I don't have it in me to get invested again. And I come away from this thinking, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, you got me back in.
You got me
and
back
it's going to have Damian Wayne in it as well. Who's like my favourite Robin, so now I'm even twice as jazzed and buzzed about that. So generally just come away from this just feeling really
And that's it, and I think that's also maybe important. I know I'm dragging this out, but like the idea that there are no even references to that Batman movie in this, it's just how well translated this movie is that it makes me excited for the wider cinematic universe without just saying like, oh, he's a tease for this plot line, or he's a nod to this character. It's like, you don't even need it. I'm just like, based off this alone, I'm kind of back into these other films that you have in the pipeline.
Yeah, so that was our review and a little breakdown of the ending for Superman brackets 2025, because you don't want to get confused. Let us know what you thought of the movie down in the comments below if you have been to see it. Did you agree with our takes or did you disagree? I'm really curious to see the conversation that's going to come out of this, because I know that some people are going to have some very, very impassioned opinions. Once you've done that, be sure to like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to War Culture for more Superman-y stuff coming forward. We're going to have an Easter eggs breakdown coming to you early next week. Apart from that, I've been Ewan, Jimmy Olsen superfan. This has been Josh.
The crypto to this Jimmy Olsen superfan. I'm always...
Bye.
See you later.